I guess we should wait just another minute for Stefan. Those on YouTube, welcome. We know due to the COVID restrictions, this meeting is to be held by a video conference and will commence at 2:30, which we're just on 2:30 now. All members participating via video conference will count for the purpose of a meeting quorum in accordance with clause 25B of Schedule 7 of the Local Government Act 2002. This meeting will be live streamed and will be available to view on YouTube. Now, as I mentioned before, for some reason, the internet's playing havoc out here. And if I have to drop off, Garrick will take over the chair. Okay, you all happy with that? Thank you. Right, I see Stefan has just logged on. So we will start. Apologies. We have apologies from Rebecca and Alex. And Pam generally sits in because of her being involved with the waste minimisation, and she has apologised too. So with that, would someone like to move we accept these apologies? Alistair and Pip, thank you. All in favour, raise your hands. Against, carried. Right. Conflicts of interest, have we any conflicts of interest? No, good. Public participation, we have none except we have Jeremy, and later on Angela from Wellington Water will be talking to the report. So okay, so we've got no actions, no extraordinary business. We do have minutes for confirmation, and would someone like...
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, were you going to add something under the extraordinary business there?
Oh, yes. Sorry, thank you, Suzanne. Colin Olds has mentioned that he can give a brief update on the, what is it, Colin?
The Wahine River Plan.
The Wahine, yes. Generally, it goes to FAR, but we've got no FAR meeting, so Colin at the end will give us a brief update where we are with that. Thank you, Colin. Right, I'm ready to roll again. Now, would someone like to move that we accept the minutes for A6, Assets and Services Committee meeting of the 27th of October 2021? Pip and Alistair. We all in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Now, is there any alterations or adjustments to those? We can, Alistair, yes.
Are we allowed to discuss an item in those minutes further down the track? I'd like to have another look at the wheels park for Greytown and the decision we got to in terms of consultation. It just doesn't make sense to me, and I'd certainly like to perhaps have another discussion about it.
Suzanne, I just wonder whether can we do that under the partnership and operations report, or
not if you're going to revisit a decision. If you wanted to revisit a decision, it would need to be a paper on the agenda and added as an extraordinary item. And that's the actual advice. Yeah.
So what I'd like to do is have the discussion as to whether we do want to revisit that, and then ask for a paper.
Yeah, fine. Add it under P&O.
Yeah,
I know we can't make a decision without having
the
sermon from the pulpit, as it were.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Okay. So we'll bring it up on the partnership and operations report, Alistair.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're all happy with A6 on minutes for confirmation. Thank you. We're now moving on to B1, which is the operational report. Where the hell can I put? I've got it here. It's coming up. God, everything's slow today.
Yeah.
Must be that clammy weather, Garrick. Right.
Yeah.
Would someone like to move that we receive the partnership and operations report, Garrick and Alistair? We're all in favour of that. Raise your hand. Thank you. Right, Stefan, it's up to you, mate. This is your report.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Look, I'll take the report as read, and you'll see from my commentary that we've made significant progress since the last reporting period, which wasn't that long ago. I guess the highlights are in roading that we're on budget, and we've got a busy program of work that continues despite some headwinds. I have mentioned some of those headwinds because I do believe it's getting to the point where we need to note those. We've got a high number of new reactive requests, and they just keep coming in week by week. Labour and material delays due to COVID, that's not unique to us. Obviously, that's happening across New Zealand, and Waka Kotahi's experiencing it as well. The growth demand, so the work coming out of planning on developments is certainly keeping us busy, and also, you know, there is the strategic work that we do with Waka Kotahi on the network. So I feel like we've made good progress, but just flagging for councillors that there is some headwinds there that we're pushing against. Amenities, you know, Bryce and the team have done a great job in that area. You would have.
Sorry, could I just interrupt? Could we do questions on each part as we go? Maybe it might be easier for Stefan because he's talking roading, and if we've got questions about roading, then perhaps do amenities. Is that a better way to do this? Maybe.
Yourself. You happy with that, Stefan?
Yeah, whatever suits.
Yep. Right. You got Alistair, you've obviously got a question.
Yeah, I do. And probably Tim's probably better placed to answer this. It's about the aggregate being ordered and crushed and applied during autumn. One of the things we've been looking at over time is costs, and it would be really interesting to get an indication from you, Stefan or Tim, as to the increase in costs we're facing for maintenance metal on our rural roads, because obviously we've got a huge number of rural roads and have we been back to regional council? I'm assuming that they have reduced the amount of aggregate that come out of rivers, and are they aware of the flow-on effect and the costs involved with that and what they may well be for us?
Tim.
Yeah, afternoon. Generally, what I've heard through the grapevine is the aggregate increase is around about 30%. Availability is scarce, but with regard to council works, we've got tender rates in there which we as council believe are fixed and subject to annual indices. So at the moment, I believe that the contractor is probably taking a hit with regard to the cost of that.
Is there something in the contract that's going to allow them to, you know, a 30% increase in costs would be outside of any normal contract, I would have thought. And is there a clause in the contract that allows them to renegotiate aggregate rates given such a large increase?
No, there's no clause, but the annual increase was roughly between 1% and 2%. And I think we're going to see the next financial year maybe up around 8 or 9% across the board.
So that's still not going to cover the 30% increase in cost, is it, for the contractor?
Yeah, the rate for the contractor is metal's one thing, transport's another. So it probably does level out.
Is the regional council putting a have they really cut back quite a large percentage of metal that's able to be extracted from the rivers?
Yeah, that's my understanding. We've got global extraction resource consents, which they haven't touched. Certainly out at Tewkesbury, White Rock, and down at Cape Palliser. I've also been in discussions with Peter Warren, and he's crushing a large quantity of metal for me down at Puranoa. And that can sit in the stockpile until we really need it. So all we were in there is the initial upfront cost to crush it. So it's in the vicinity of 5,000 cubic metres.
Is this change in extraction amounts from the regional council going to see an increase in quarries and consenting for quarries going to come up around the district, do you think?
Bearing in mind that the council road maintenance contractors is a small user of the resource. You've got subdivisions, concrete, there's stuff carted over the hill for transmission gully. It's all taking their portion out of it. And I suppose looking forward to the big projects, there is the Manawatu Gorge. So some of that will be serviced from this side of the Taurua Ranges. So it all does impact on resource and use. And I think we all see as we drive around the district, the residual aggregate in the rivers seems to be increasing, but the extraction and ability to extract is getting harder and harder. And as you appreciate, there's a cost to applying and managing a resource consent.
You happy with that, Alistair?
Well, I suppose, Stefan, now it comes to you really as where to from here, I suppose, because we need to be prepared for an increase in costs, and what sort of costs are we going to be prepared to, we need to be forewarning the community that the costs are growing outside of our control.
Can I just add a bit more there? We're quite a way through our reseal program this year, and it's just crushed chip comes out of Wainawa generally, and already we've seen the quarry suppliers unable to supply certain grades of chip. So either we're going to have to adapt our designs, and generally if we're adapting, we've got to size up. So that means more bitumen on the roads, more chip. So just has an impact on the rate per square metre because you're applying more product for no really additional gain, really. So it's not only just metaling, it's everything we do and everything that happens within the region, and even the growth in subdivisions, with the aggregate sort of tied up between Fulton Hogan and Higgins, the ability for new players to come into the market is very slim because they haven't got competitive access to raw material.
So with that in mind, do you think it's prudent that we perhaps get a report, Stefan, looking at crystal gazing the future, because obviously next year we're going to be starting to review the long-term plan again. This is going to have a huge impact. When does the Rimahanga contract expire, Tim, or up for renewal?
The first rollover is in 2024, so that generally happens. So, but you got to bear in mind we're up against not so much Cardinal Council, but Marsden District Council. What happens on the state highways? We're all competing against the same raw material resource, and I won't say it's finite, but certainly access to it is limited.
Yeah, I suppose the thing that does worry me, I'm sorry for taking up all the time here, but obviously we've seen a new quarry occur in Featherston that came in like a bolt out of the blue and has hit us between the eyes. And if the regional council is going to reduce the metal and we've got to look at perhaps ground-based materials, then we may well end up with quarries coming up all over the place, which will cause even more concern for us. So I think we need to sort of front foot this a little bit and actually maybe prepare the ground for the community to actually understand that this is what's happening, and it is outside of our control.
Yep,
Okay.
I think you're right there. But I suppose if you look back historically, councils would have the same concern 20 years ago with regard to forestry, and it was all doom and gloom when they decided to run out, and it hasn't really come to fruition.
Yep. Anything you'd like to add to that, Stefan?
No, I think that's those are points well made. Just in the round, I would be, we will be reporting to council on any risk to delivery, including cost pressure. So I'll take that back with Tim and make sure that we identify that specific risk in future reporting. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, just while we're on rating, I want to thank Stefan and Ben for the discussion we had out at Hinakura regarding the Hinakura Hill. I think it went very, very well. And the feedback I've had from the locals out there is they just want to be kept in the loop. They understand that it's a moving beast and a lot of it's beyond us, well, what we're able to do to it. But I guess in saying that, the thing that we can do is just keep them informed and keep up with the maintenance. But Stefan, just pass that back to Ben too. I think they really appreciated that.
You Chair.
Yep. Right. Amenity. Oh, sorry, Pip.
I just want to also just say one thank you for that. You did such a fantastic job that evening, Stefan. It was fantastic. Actually, it was a really, really good meeting with a concerned area of our community. So thank you for doing such a great job and having everything prepared that they could actually, physically see and take home with them information. I think that was really, really key as well. And but also, with regards to the work that you've been doing with Aidan as well, really big thank you for that. It's really fantastic to see the work along with those amenities as well, the work that's being done. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass it on.
Yep. Well, moving on, amenities. You just started on that, Stefan, so I'll let you finish.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Bryce is online, but him and the team have done really well, and they do continue to pump out the work. The playgrounds and the reserves are looking good for the holiday period. We've got new planting, and you see the photos of the seats in there, which are really appreciated by everyone, especially older people perhaps who need to rest their legs on a walk. It's important to have those facilities in there.
And not so older people.
Yeah, that's right. Anyone who needs to rest. Yeah, I wasn't looking at anyone in particular. And we got the Featherston and Martinborough pools done, and there was a wee delay, but they're done in time for people to use them over summer. And we got those barbecues and shade covers in, which I'm sure they'll be appreciated as well by families. So, in a fairly short space of time, the team's got quite a lot of that project work done. I'm really happy with that. Happy to answer any questions.
All happy with that?
Is this where you want us to raise the park issue, Jeppy, or?
I think I was just coming to that, yeah, but if everyone's happy with what's in the report and there's no more discussion with Stefan, yes, Alistair, by all means, raise it.
So at the last, thanks, Jeppy, at the last Assets and Services meeting, and then it went to council, we talked about the process for getting the Wheels Park underway, and at that time, Garrick and I were appointed to be on the, as the council is on that steering group. With Bryce and Sid, and one of the things we've been trying to do is try to get a meeting between the four of us so that we could set a time frame of how this is going to progress. Obviously, we all approved the money to do this project. What came out was that we're going to have to go out and consult with the whole community again over the design, and that's the part I'd like to actually have a look at again. Because I'm not quite sure what we're going to achieve by going out and consulting on what sort of swing we're going to have or whether it's going to have a basketball. That consultation was done as part of getting the design done, and it was done with Kuranui College, and it was done with Greytown School, and it was done with different groups with Rotary and so on and so forth within the people within Greytown. And the consent part that I'm thinking we should be doing is actually lodging the consent to build it and then actually consulting with the affected parties, so the neighbours and so on, as to how we can mitigate their concerns about lighting and noise and those things, as opposed to going back out to consult on a design, which will just, all it will do is delay the process. And whether somebody, there's the design of the playground itself has certainly been up in the library in Greytown for a couple of months now, and there's been lots of good feedback coming. I'm just not quite sure what we're going to achieve by going out and asking about consulting the whole South Wairarapa about, is the swing in the right place, or is the basketball court good, or are the stairs in, as opposed to dealing with the concerns of the neighbours of where this is going. Because we've actually already consulted, we've got the money, we've got a very wide consensus from within the community to proceed. Now we need to actually get this underway. So that's my thoughts, and I'm just wondering whether we need to revisit this a little bit.
Yeah, Pip.
From what I can remember, it was because Alex had said that this was for the South Wairarapa and not just for Greytown, and that was why he wanted the consultation to be at that next level, because of the fact that there's a lot of students that aren't necessarily based in Greytown that go to Kuranui as well, that had feedback, and so I'm pretty sure that that's why that was there. He said that would need to be the next step.
And that's exactly why we, right at the start of the design, Kuranui was very actively involved in the design. And so just to give a bit of explanation about how the design came about, it actually wasn't adults' design. It was young people putting in their ideas. That I don't know anything about a skate park. I don't know anything about a swing. So we got these ideas from the people who were going to use the park, and Kuranui was very actively involved in it. And as you remember, they came and presented to us. And those kids that presented weren't all Greytown kids. They were actually kids from across the district. And the same with Greytown's primary school kids. We have done a very wide engagement with what we perceive as the users of this. And now we need to actually progress this and going into now, because as you remember, some of the feedback we got from some of the people who were supportive of the thing, but had concerns about noise and security and those sorts of things. And they tend to be the neighbours or in the district where the park is going. And they're the people who we will be able to consult with once we do the consent to actually go and build it, because they're the affected parties. Otherwise we're going to be even further down the track, months down the track, and will be at least a year probably by the time we even start the consent process from when we said yes to this in the long-term plan. That's my concern.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I just wanted to quickly check because I'm just looking at, is it mainly that last one then about it coming to the design that you say is already up in Greytown, coming to council for approval, the concept design and consultation plan? Is that what you're talking about? That's number 5.
I can't remember what number it was, but it was in the last paper. So it's had all the design and the roadworks and the park design, where the water's going, the toilet, everything's in, has been submitted to this committee and to council, and a lot of that was done as part of the money that was given to the action group to get that design for us done, following on from the feedback from the community.
Gary.
Community.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Just a quick one, Alex. Has that concept design been distributed widely around the community? Will that not suffice? I mean, has it been to the other libraries and asked for feedback? I mean, we need to be actively seen to be engaging.
I can't answer that. It's certainly been through Greytown and the library, at the schools, at Kuranui.
No, I appreciate that, but I'm just sort of saying, that, taking on Alex's point, that we really want the whole community to know, if they want to, they can have some feedback, And so let's call it engagement, and the document is available and is out there, and is it libraries or community boards or whatever, and then
there would be no problems to get
we've made reasonable effort to actually get it out there.
There's no problems to get the group, the community group that's organising the design, to put those designs up in the rest and the other towns right through the Christmas period if you want. That's yes. Easily done. I could get Sid to do that probably next day or so.
I just think that would show, we are trying, we are engaging. There's a chance for people to come back and comment. And would that suffice, or does Alex want to go further? But I think that would probably be, at least get the thing kicked off rather than sitting around, as you say, waiting.
Yeah, I totally agree, Gary. And I think what Alice is trying to say is we don't want to be mucking around with the finite designs of swing seats and all the rest of it. We get the concept out there, get agreement on that, and get the ball rolling, because it has taken some time to get where we are now, and we can be discussing this forever and get nowhere. Is that basically what you're wanting, Alistair?
Yeah, it is. We're 20 years since this was first muted, and
that's right.
My fear is that if it just sits here, it's going to be a year before we even lodge a consent. And that just seems madness. There was basically sort of 95% agreement on this across the whole district. It was probably the most supported thing there was, and we really should get on with it.
Okay, well, on that, will you speak to Sid and see if we can get something out to the other libraries and the other towns?
Yes,
I just want to check though, because Suzanne said that we can't change.
No, we're not changing.
We're not changing. We'll get them out there, and then we'll get a report back whether we need to go out and consult
further.
Is that right? Is that right, Suzanne?
I think Bryce might have actually had something to say on this. Can we hear from Bryce first?
Yeah. So Pip is right. That's Karen Yates brought this up. I believe the $1 million was coming out of the reserve fund, which is held for everybody, and that's why it needed to be shown throughout the whole committee, the whole district. Yeah, I agree with Alistair. The other issue, Alistair, is manpower, mate. We are under the pump on everything at the moment. And
I completely agree with you, Bryce. I'm just trying to keep the process rolling a little bit, because the death of this is going to be inaction.
Yeah, it's not going to be the death of it. It's just things are going to take time. Even just getting tenders out and finding people to actually do the work will be and getting material will be a real problem in this current environment.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that answer your queries, Alistair?
Yeah. Look, I'll speak to Sid this afternoon and say, look, can we get some concept designs over to Martinborough and Featherston over the Christmas period, and that'll give us an indication of whether we're getting much feedback anyway.
Oh, great. Okay.
And
right.
Even if there's like a little thing that they can provide the feedback, so we can get a report or something.
Yeah. So what they did in Greytown was stickies, and people could put stick-it notes up on the design, and Sid would go around and collect them regularly and use those and pass them back to the designer so he could incorporate those into the design. So that
was probably pre-COVID though.
Yeah. Yep, right. I think we're on the right track. I think what you're saying, Alice, is we need to keep this moving, and we will. So we'll keep the finger on it. And thanks, Bryce, for your input. Now we're moving on to water, Stefan.
Yes, yeah, thank you. You'll see from the report that water is a dominant theme in our work at the moment. A lot going on across the CapEx and OpEx program. I think what I might do in relation to water, given it's given the breadth of issues that are in the report, is just take questions on that section, if that's all right with you, Chair.
I think we've lost Jeppy. Hello, Jeppy. Can the rest of you hear me? Okay, let's keep going because we thought we might have a problem with Jeppy anyway. So yes, questions on the water issue moving forward. Just starting from the summary there, Wellington Water report back on late December. Is that going to happen? Do you know?
Sorry, is this in relation to?
It's in relation to the Wellington Water Operation Performance 3.1.
Ah, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So as councillors will know, we had an initial workshop with the CE of Wellington Water to go over some of the concerns, some of the performance issues that were councillors wanted to raise with Wellington Water, and I think that was a successful engagement. People were able to flesh out things and get answers from the CE, which was good. A report with more detail is due to council. It's also as part of that report, there's another report due on the Featherston Wastewater Treatment Plant specifically. Both of those are in train. We're sort of pulling out all the stops to get those reports to council by Christmas as promised.
You mean council meeting or? Oh, Jeppy's back. Jeppy?
Yeah. Carry on, Gary. Yeah.
Yeah, we've only got, basically it's only 10 days to go. That was all.
Alistair.
Yeah, could I ask Stefan? There continues to be a lot of commentary in social media about the water meter trials in Greytown, and that this is wasteful spending and so on and so forth. I think we really do need to get it out there and very, very clearly that this is part of the stimulus package from COVID that is paying for this trial, and is not it's not rateable, it's not ratepayer money. So maybe we need to do a bit of publicity about the trial and how we're funding this, because there seems to be a lot of ongoing, this is part of the rates debacle, so on and so forth. But the trial is paid for out of the stimulus money that came out of COVID. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe that is correct, and I agree with you, Councillor. I think this is actually a good news story. It's a way of improving our efficiency and informing and educating people on the use of what's obviously a precious resource. So we do have some proactive media planned on the trial, and I'll make sure that we are very clear about how it's being funded in media that'll be put out.
The other issue that is quite topical in Greytown at the moment, obviously, is the Papawai wastewater line, and I think there's a lot of uncertainty about what's caused this and why. And I think that's another one that we need to be very, very clear to the public of Greytown and say, this is what the original scope was. This is what the scope is now because of the change in ground conditions, or the fact that the ground conditions weren't taken into account when the original pricing was done, and so on, and where we are, and what, just, it's got to be very clearly labeled in plain English so people understand where it's come from and what the cost implications of it are.
Yeah, we did, as you know, Councillor, put a report to the committee on this, and we tried to make it as sort of clear in plain English as we could. This was a to be fair to Wellington Water, this was a project that was designed prior to them receiving it. So they received a project that had been designed and then were responsible to tender and deliver it. The construction methodology had to change from using a system of thrusting the pipes through the ground to using an open trench, and that has increased the cost. that was because of ground conditions, as you've correctly pointed out. You know, that report is available online. We could do some more to make sure people had access to that report and understood the issues in the report, but it was fairly clear.
I think there's clarity that we are picking up as here, because we're over this and we're talking about this regularly, and then there's clarity for the public who all they see is another $1.9 million on a bill. So I think it's the report for us is great, but I think the way we publicise some of these issues to the public needs to be a little bit clearer, and perhaps actually out in the newspaper or whatever to show that people, because there are comments being made which are not necessarily true, and perhaps not quite as clear as they could be. Now, whether that's through a lack of understanding, which I would hope it was, rather than anything else, I think perhaps as council, we need to be very clear in our communications with the public when these things do go over budget. And this is not going to be the last one. There's going to be lots of others that go over budget. But if we are very, very clear with our communications to the public and doing it in a way that the general public will understand or can read it and understand simply, I think that's going to help a lot of issues. I don't know, Pip, you're smiling, but
Sorry, my dog just nodded off.
I hope other people watching aren't nodding off. So I just think we need to be very clear in our communications to the public. It's one thing to actually writing a report to council and to committees. It's another thing to actually write a report or a thing that goes into the newspaper or into the local papers or into our social media site.
Great. Okay. Look, thank you. I will take that back. Of course, the recommendation was that that the additional money to complete the project shouldn't be spent, and that we should stop at the 50% mark, and then take the growth capacity that we've got, the dividend that we've got from that work, and then return to it later on, given there wasn't any downside on network performance. So if that recommendation is taken up, then I think there's an opportunity there to put some media out and in layman's terms just explain exactly what's going on. And Councillor, I just got a note passed to me from Wellington Water. We did put that proactive media out on the Greytown meters yesterday, and it did mention specifically that it was funded from stimulus, but we will pick that up with any future media as well. Thanks.
Yeah. Stefan, when are we likely to the approval to split the contract on Papawai, is that yet to be confirmed, or I mean, I saw your letter on it suggesting that we should carry on from halfway through and then the rest later on. Is there a hold up on that decision?
No, that is we are proposing to accept that recommendation from Wellington Water. I mean, we're not in the situation of asking for additional resource and seeking a further approval. I think if we wanted to make sure that councillors got really good early information on what we were proposing to do, so that if, for example, you decided, well, we would like to take this back to council and spend the extra $2 million to complete that growth project now, for example, you had that opportunity. But my reading of the room is that it's not the right time to do that, and that we are going to accept that recommendation, and then we will, as Mr. Plimmers suggested, put some comms around that so that people know what's going on.
Do you need a formal motion on that issue or not? You're quite happy to carry on from there?
No, I'm happy to make, I believe, if I'm correct, that that's an operational decision that we will make. I just wanted to make sure that there was comfort with that around this table.
Thank you. That's good. Anybody else got concerns? Pip, you all right? Yeah. Okay. Alistair, you want to carry on? I'm happy to carry on with water. A couple of other queries. 3.3, the community liaison groups, that was a requirement for all of the consents. I'm somewhat concerned that we were never complied as from the Greytown and Martinborough consent, which was 2017. Is that up to us to reform?
My understanding, Councillor, is that yes, it is up to us to reform those CLGs around Greytown and Martinborough.
Yeah.
And that they are a forum for dealing with issues around the wastewater plants, and that an identical requirement would have to be put in place for Featherston wastewater treatment plant once that project advances.
Yeah, the requirement, as I understand, is that the consent holder, i.e. us, has to invite all submitters. It's going to be, I'm not quite sure if we've got those records. Colin, do you know if we've got those records going back that far?
Sorry, I think we should have, yeah.
So it's all submitters are allowed to attend those meetings, but by not attending doesn't necessarily mean that we South Wairarapa have not complied. I think we should make that very clear, because wastewater is a bit of a contentious issue out there, and I would not like us to be seen as not complying with a condition which came in the original consent. So happy to be involved, but I think we really need to push that one along.
Okay, agreed. And I'll take that back to Wellington Water and we'll push that forward.
Thank you. That's good. The other one I was going to have a look at, where are we? We talk about unmetered consumption. This is further down the same page under 3.4. And I'm just confused about, there's a little quote there at the top of the next page. So it's talks about characterization of rural users. I'm not quite sure what that means. So we talk about possibility of unmetered or unauthorized water consumption, and then characterization of rural users. Can you explain for me, or are we just sort of, am I missing something here?
No, you're probably not missing something, because I can't explain that either. It may be that one of the Wellington Water team could shed some light on that for us. Otherwise, I will get you a response intercessionally.
Yeah, no, it was just that we're talking about urban water supply, and I just wonder why the rural comment suddenly popped in there. And as I say, it's yeah.
You would think that that rural users not being reticulated would not be a feature of this analysis, but there could be a reason why they are.
Yeah, I think Jeremy's fronted up, so he may.
Jeremy, would you be able to help us out with this?
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure that on that particular line, but I know that we've identified there's a number of connections that aren't metered, which, I mean, you know, I guess in a metro environment, we we have well, certainly in Wellington we have a great number of unmetered users, but in the context of South Wairarapa, where we generally have meters, that's, I guess, an anomaly. So we have picked up that there's a number of supplies that aren't currently metered, and we're just getting to the bottom of what that means for our overall mass balance summary.
Yeah, great. Yeah, great. You just give us a definition at some stage, Jeremy. Just jumped out at me. We've lost you. Sorry, we're having a bad day here, guys. Further questions on water coming through. Anybody else? Alistair.
Yeah, Stefan, you'll have seen we got a fantastic summary of costs from Wellington Water the other day, or cost increases across all the different parts of their operations. Is that going to be put into a report so that we can get it out to the public? Because that gave a really good, I think, snapshot of what's going on in terms of inflationary pressures on the costs that we're facing. And I think, again, that's something that I think our public need to be aware of, these very large inflationary pressures that we're facing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor. I think I'm glad you enjoyed that paper, because I did think it was worth sharing.
I didn't enjoy it at all, I can tell you that.
I did think it was worth sharing with councillors as really important context for the kind of pressure that's coming on delivery, and perhaps, yeah, I think you're right. I think that's something that could be important sort of landscape for messaging to the public, and so yes, agree with you. We'll take that on board.
Thank you. Any other queries then going through? Should we move on now to the actual?
Yeah, Colin's waving.
Colin's waving. Hello, Colin.
Oh, hi. Yeah. Yes. Stefan, just a quick query out of the conversation we had with Wellington Water the other day. I understand there's some work being done at the Featherston Wastewater Treatment Plant in terms of water quality, etc., going back into the ponds. Can you perhaps give us a little bit of a brief on what's happening there?
Sorry, could you just define your question a bit more? Are you talking about water quality testing at the site? Or are you talking about
wastewater? I understand there's some work being done at the wastewater treatment plant in terms of water, looking at better ways of treating water.
So, as far, I mean, in headline terms, we are still considering options for Featherston Wastewater Treatment Plant, and we know that a report is due to councillors soon, which would give more information on consentability and affordability and flesh those options out. I think the worst thing that we could do to you is give you something that wasn't new and that wasn't fit for purpose in terms of exploring those options properly and giving you good quality information. We're working hard with Wellington Water at the moment to make sure that we are able to do that, and we are trying to do it prior to Christmas. One of the things that we're exploring with Wellington Water is an on-site options, which would see black box sort of MBBR options built on site, and that would improve the water quality to the level that we would be able to gain a consent. It's just there are different ways of doing that at different costs, and they can be staged in different ways, and it's that we're trying to get right for you in the report.
Okay, thank you.
Hey guys, I'm back on. I don't know whether you can hear me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on my phone. Garrett, you carry on. I haven't got all my data with me.
Okay, all right. So we've now moving on to questions on the Assets and Services Program report. Any queries on there, the timelines going through? There's obviously the Featherston Wastewater is an obvious one, which we're going to have some more information on. And the other one, which is anything else there people are concerned about with timelines. The other one that was worrying me was the consent for the Longwood Water Race. It was supposed to be done about a year ago, and obviously there's some concerns. This is for the new consent on the Longwood Water Race. So are you over that one, Stefan?
There is a series of issues relating to water races, the operation of and the consenting and the use of water races. And I do think that this is an area that where we need to bring you a report. There is the water races have faced some changes to the way that they're managed, and users have, on the whole, adapted to that quite well. I have had, I've only been here a few months, but I've only had one complaint about the way that the water races are being managed at the moment. So that's encouraging, but there are some issues there that I think it's worth exploring. Consent for the water races, I think, are going to become more complicated given the new regulatory demands that will be placed on them. We don't know yet exactly how that is going to play out and what the new requirements might mean for us and for landowners and the different variety of landowners that there are that use the water races. And water quality data, of course, will be central to all of that. So, you know, without dodging the question or appearing to dodge the question, would it be all right if I come back to you in the new year with a more considered and detailed report that we can then get our teeth into as a team?
Yeah, surely. It's just my concern is the timetable for that was December 2020, which is now, which was last year. We're now a year behind already. I'm not quite sure what the next move is. And the other thing, Colin and I had a very interesting meeting with Greater Wellington about the new conditions for water races, which are a surprise to both of us as well, and I guess will be a surprise to you. So I think that could be a worthwhile exercise. If I don't know how you feel about it, Colin, but to actually get that information back on the table as well. I don't know whether you've seen the regional council presentation, Stefan, but it's I found it very eye-opening.
That councillor, that's part of the problem. I haven't actually seen that presentation, and I haven't managed to speak with Greater Wellington yet, and so I don't really have visibility of what the impacts may be and where we've got influence points for it. And I just would like to get across that before I sort of try and engage with you in detail on the issues.
Yeah. So I'm very happy to drop in and go through it with you. I've got it on mine. It was quite eye-opening. Alistair.
Yeah, just on the water races, and I completely agree with everything you've said there, Garrick. I spoke to a couple of farmers today, and they've had no heads up or no indication of what the new rules are going to be. And when you take one of the farmers in particular has almost 10 kilometres of water race in his farm, the costs that he could be potentially facing are just astronomical. So we really do need to get on top of this. We need to get in front of this, and so that we know what is going to happen. Before Wellington Regional just comes out and makes an edict, because no matter what, even if it says let's start fencing, you're not going to get all these water races fenced for a few years just because of the lack of fences in the district.
Yeah.
So, we have to be practical. We need to come up with practical solutions and work with the regional council and the farmers to actually work out how we're going to do this.
Yeah. Can I just summarise by saying that we discussed this morning at council, and I think the feeling was there we need to sit down and actually have a serious look at some of this. So let's not hold it back now. We'll move on. But yeah, the offer's on the table, Stephen, and I'm sure Colin and I are happy to get involved. Right, moving on. Any further questions on the operational performance and timetable in there for the water? The last chart's quite interesting, team. It's the dashboard of the quarterly levels of delivery by Wellington Water. I think most of you have seen the annual reports on those. No other queries? Have we lost you, Jeppy? Are you still there?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I'm just saving my battery by cutting my mug off it.
Okay, so we're now moving on to the global stormwater consent. Now, I think we have a colleague joining us from Wellington Water on this.
Yes, Angela, I think.
Kia ora koutou.
Yeah, greetings. Can you just walk us through this initial concept? So obviously we have to go through a series of consents. And sorry, welcome aboard. We're struggling with bad technology today, but over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. I'm going to assume that everybody has read the paper. But if that's not the case and you want me to go into something in more detail, just let me know. Basically, there are three things going on, which I'm going to talk about. First, that we need to obtain a consent. Second, that we need to implement the consent. And third, that we'll then use the information from implementation to go and gain the third longer term consent. So in terms of stormwater, we're getting a global consent, which covers all the discharge points from your stormwater network. Rather than having to list them all individually, it just covers anywhere that your stormwater network discharges back into the receiving environment. And so the stage 1 consent, we're going to lodge it by Christmas. If we get it lodged by Christmas, we get the advantage of a relatively easy consent status, a controlled activity consent, which can't be refused, and Greater Wellington will process it on a non-notified basis. The whole point of the stage 1 consent is to gather information about the contaminants that are in the stormwater. And also how those contaminants affect the receiving environment. So the rivers and streams that that your stormwater network currently discharges back into. Before we're going to lodge, but in the new year, we are going to go and talk with the Maori Standing Committee to take us to explain to them what is going on, particularly with the fact it's a 2-stage consent. And we're also going to engage with Rangatane because they've got statutory authority over the Ruamahanga. Sorry, my dog just tried to eat a fly and knocked a glass of water over.
We're all having a bad day here. It's all right.
Thank you. So that's sort of the first part of what I wanted to explain to you. The second part is about implementing that consent. So once we've got the consent, we'll be able to keep on discharging the stormwater back into the environment, but we need to monitor it. So we need to check for the contaminants that are in there. We're looking for things like heavy metals, E. coli, nutrients, hydrocarbons. We're also looking at temperature because high temperatures can damage flora and fauna in the receiving water bodies. So we'll be checking all those things on a regular basis, and we've got a monitoring plan that we're working through with Greater Wellington at the moment, and we're trying to keep the costs of that monitoring as low as possible because it will be OPEX, and we're aware that cost is quite a concern for South Wairarapa at the moment. So we'll be doing that work. Apart from monitoring, the only time we would have to do physical works is if we detect high levels of E. coli in some of the discharges. And if that happens, then we'll need to go out and try and find the source of that E. coli. If it's significant enough to affect human health, because you do get low levels of E. coli from dog poos on the street or birds that have left their droppings. But if they're high enough to affect human health in the receiving water environment, if someone's swimming or something, we'll need to go out and see whether we can find out what's going on. It might be a cross connection from a wastewater pipe or something like that. And then the third stage is the stage 2 stormwater consent. We will use all the data we've collected and look to see whether or not you have got high enough levels of contaminants to be adversely affecting the receiving water bodies. And then we have to come up with a plan to progressively, not overnight, but progressively tackle those problems so that the receiving water bodies can come, the water quality in them can come up to the standards that are required by the regional plan. And we'll start having those conversations with you probably in 2025, and we'll look to obtain that consent in 2027. I think that's my overview.
Colin, queries?
Yeah, thanks, Angie. Just a quick question, or a couple of quick questions. One is that we've got multiple receiving environments across obviously the networks and no set point source discharge. So discharges into those receiving environments. How would you manage that? And my second question is NZTA in terms of their involvement with the consenting process and the costs associated to that.
NZTA is a bit easier to explain, so I'll do that one first. They have to get their own consent. So they'll have a consent for all of State Highway 2, from Hutt Valley up to the northern parts of Greater Wellington, and then a separate one for the other. So they'll get a global consent for all of the state highway networks in the region, basically. So you won't be having to clean up the discharges that come off their trucks in particular, which is quite a cost saving.
Cool.
Now, in terms of we've got people who are skilled and experienced with monitoring on board. You're right, there are a range of receiving environments. The water races are receiving environments. You've got natural streams that are receiving environments, and they all discharge gradually down to the Ruamahanga or the Chirenikau. So we've just picked representative sampling sites, and we'll see what happens in those. There are pipes that take the water directly into some of those water streams. So we'll monitor sometimes in the pipe and sometimes downstream of the pipe so that we can determine what the effects are.
Right, excellent, thank you.
Can I just raise a couple of points? I'm a little bit concerned about your timeline, because you're under an incredible amount of stress to get this lodged by the end of this year. And then you've still got the consultation to carry on with iwi going through to 2022. Are we going to make it? Or by lodge, you just mean get the document in? Is that all we have to do?
Yes, that's all I'm intending to do, is get the document in and be very clear that we haven't engaged with Mana Whenua or the Maori Standing Committee at this point, and that we're not expecting the application to proceed particularly fast while we go out and do that work. I'm particularly keen, to be honest, to get some, because one of the things that we have to consider with our monitoring plan is whether or not we're taking appropriate account of Maori cultural values. And so I do need feedback from these parties before I can proceed too far.
The other one was, you're aware of the situation in Greytown where stock water in the water race actually ends up with stormwater going in.
Yes, yes. Your water races are quite a big part of your stormwater network.
They are, and that's been an ongoing concern. We had, I don't know if you heard it before, we had a brief discussion about water races going through. So just as long as you're aware of that going through, and if we can keep to the timetable, that'd be great. Okay. Alistair.
Yeah, look, I was going to raise that exact issue about stormwater in Greytown. Is this likely to head down the track of actually having to create a stormwater network and then treat? Because at the moment there are contaminants. We know there are contaminants. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. So at what stage does it turn out then that you have to create a stormwater collection point and treatment? Yeah,
that's something that we're grappling with at the moment in the Wellington urban context, because Wellington is already halfway through its 5-year consent process. So I can't give you a clear answer, I'm sorry. It depends on a range of factors. If most of the contaminants are nutrients, for some areas, the worst contaminants might be nutrients coming off your sports fields, in which case I think we can manage that by prevention rather than by treatment. If it's heavy metals and other things coming out of contaminated sites, again, it'll be easier to manage it at source, perhaps by rehabilitating some of those sites rather than by treating all the stormwater. The complicated one, I think, is going to be if we're getting high levels of hydrocarbons in the roads. There are things that can treat those, and they can be reasonably site specific so that we don't need to gather all the stormwater into one place and then treat it. But I'm not sure what's going to be most cost effective for you. And just because there are contaminants there doesn't mean that they are of high enough concern to be adversely affecting all the values that I listed earlier around Maori cultural values, recreation and ecology. So that's one of the things that we'll be looking at, is the concentrations. And also that you're not the only source of contaminants. Like in Wellington City, stormwater is a huge component of the contamination that's facing our harbours and our streams, whereas over in South Wairarapa it's quite different.
I suppose just leading on, carrying on from Garrick's point though, with the stormwater going into our water races, are you going to be perhaps looking at the effect on the stock further down the line? Because obviously if we've got contaminants going into the water races, it's going into the food chain as well then through our stock.
Yeah, so we'll pick up on a wide range of things. I have to admit, I hadn't thought about it actually adversely impacting the stock who might be drinking from it. I've been more focused on the fish and the macroinvertebrates and the periphyton growth and all those things. But yeah, that is another thing that we should take care of. And we will be looking at things that I would imagine would affect stock. I'm not a farmer, so I'm not sure, but I'd imagine that things like heavy metals aren't good for your stock, and we'll be looking at things like that.
I wouldn't think that'd be very good for our milk we drink either.
The funding for this is coming from?
So the consent itself has a line in your long-term plan at the moment as CapEx. We're working with the service planning team, Martin Cole, who is then working with Stefan about the first couple of years of the monitoring plan, which will be the most expensive, and that will come out of OPEX, and then there'll be a few more and then it'll get cheaper later on, but we'll still provide all that information to you. And then when we have to start developing the bigger consent that will be longer term, that will again be CapEx, and we'll put that into the next LTP request as well.
Okay, so it's in our LPT now is what you're telling me. So
some of it is. The seeking the consent is in your LTP at the moment, but the monitoring costs of implementing it are not.
Okay.
And that's OPEX.
Yep. Thank
you. And well, that, I presume, if the Three Waters goes ahead, this all goes with it?
I would assume so, yeah.
That's the other concern, because if it does go with it, are they going to take the water races? We don't know, but just throw it out. It could save us a lot of work, Stefan, if they take the water races.
Yeah, it sort of cuts both ways, doesn't it?
Any other queries, please? Of Arnold before we go. All right, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Right. So unless there's anything else under that, I'll now move to close the meeting. Is that correct, Suzanne?
Mr. Chair, we've kind of jumped around a little bit. So we've got to move in receiver for the partnership and operations report. We skipped the action items, and then we jumped onto the stormwater, the global stormwater consent. So we need to move to receive that report, and then maybe we go back to do the actions.
Oh, I thought we did the actions. Sorry. I'll blame Jeppy.
No, you won't.
Can I
can hear you.
He's not here. Can I have a mover, please, to receive the action report? Thank you very much. Councillor Plymouth, Councillor Maynard, all those in favour, raise your hands. Against, carried. Sorry, what was the other one, Suzanne, just to prompt me, please?
Action items.
Action items.
So that one we just did was the actions. We also need to do the global stormwater consent report.
Oh, I thought I did that. Okay. It was a good discussion. Moved Alistair, seconded Councillor Maynard, that the global stormwater be accepted. All those in favour, raise a hand. Against, carried. Are you happy? Sorry about that. It's a bit confusing today. Right. So with your permission, then, Suzanne, do we close this section of the meeting and move into public excluded?
Don't we need to go through the action items report?
Well, there's any comments. Well, do you want to start to kick it off, Alistair? I've got a couple of comments there, which was just to it's well down. It was just on the eco reef, which I was quite concerned about or interested in.
Let's do that one first.
Start at the top.
I'll
81.
move that we receive the action items.
Okay, thank you. I'll second it. Right, so going through the action items, some of them have been there for a while. Some of them were actually moved by Councillor Olds in a previous life.
Okay, well, there's a couple here that we need to follow up. The number 280, district-wide review of the safety of our pedestrian crossings. The report was due in October.
Yep.
Are you able to provide an update on the timing of that delivery to committee?
In terms of? when we'd like it reported back. We've lost you, Stefan.
If I understood Councillor's question correctly, he was asking when you might receive the report, because it's already a couple of months overdue. And I was just asking my roading manager if he had any further information. But I don't think I've got him online at the moment. So I'll drop him a text and see if I can do that within the scope of this meeting. Otherwise, I'll come back to you.
Thank you. And my two were 301, which was a report on the Cape Palace. And what's happening out there, Jeppy? You got any news?
Yeah, they're all got everything in place. They're doing a little bit of prep work at the moment, and with the view of placing the eco reefs in position early next year. Is that right, Stefan?
Yes, that's correct. The installation is scheduled for mid-January.
Okay, thank you.
God, I hate Zoom.
Any other queries there about the Tiriniki cycle bridge or anything? We're all happy. Have you got any more news or update on that, Stefan?
I see Alex is supposed to have had a conversation with Greg Lang.
Yeah, we've stopped pouring concrete. I think we couldn't get it.
Yeah, hi, Gary, it's Bryce here.
Yep.
So the Tiriniki bridge has been delayed for 4 months due to the and IRG are aware of it. Delay is from COVID in Northland. The team that are doing the work out there are being held up in Northland on the Papal bridge. So they're looking at pouring the base footings mid to late January. So opening day is now pushed out to about early September. But when I say opening day, that's making sure that everything's finished. Okay, so the actual bridge will probably be up in about 12 to 14 weeks if the weather holds once they start work. Okay.
Okay, thank you for that.
Financially, it's on track.
So, Bryce, when you say everything done, is that including the Underhill Road
that's
trails as well?
That's what's been agreed by the councillors, so that's just something we have to work through between now and then.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else got any concerns? Right. Okay, this time. Are we happy now, Suzanne, to close the meeting?
All happy, Mr. Chair.
Okay. With your consent, we'll close the meeting and move into public excluded for the next part. So if you'll unstream, can I have somebody move in the second that we actually close the meeting? Thank you, Alistair. Second, Jeppy, and move into public excluded. Hang on, I'm still being waved at. Yes.
So the resolution is to go into public excluded, not close the meeting.
Oh, go into public excluded. The meeting's still running. Sorry. All those in favour, raise your hands.
So excuse me, was that Councillor Plummer and
Councillor Jepp?